After Joshua led the Israelites into the Promised Land, a new chapter in their history began. Joshua had been a formidable leader, guiding the Israelites with strength and faith. Under his command, they had conquered much of Canaan, securing a foothold in the land promised to them by God. However, the conquest was far from complete. Pockets of resistance remained, and the land was still dotted with Canaanite strongholds. Without Joshua's strong leadership, the Israelites faced a new challenge. They were no longer a unified force marching behind one man. Instead, they lived as 12 tribes, each with its own territory and leadership. This disunity made them vulnerable to external threats and internal strife. The absence of a central government or a single leader to unite them led to a period of turbulence and uncertainty. The Israelites needed guidance, and this need gave rise to the era of the judges. These judges were not like modern-day judges sitting in courtrooms. They were more like charismatic military leaders chosen by God to deliver the Israelites from their enemies. The judges were a diverse group of individuals, each with unique strengths and weaknesses. They were warriors, prophets, and leaders who rose to prominence in times of crisis. Their stories are recorded in the Book of Judges, a collection of tales that highlight their bravery, cunning, and sometimes brutal violence. These stories are not just exciting adventure narratives, they reveal a deeper truth about the Israelites' relationship with God. The Book of Judges shows a cyclical pattern of sin, punishment, repentance, and deliverance. The Israelites would turn away from God, falling into sin and idolatry. As a result, they would face oppression and hardship at the hands of their enemies. In their distress, they would cry out to God for help, and He would raise up a judge to deliver them. This cycle repeated itself throughout the period of the Judges, highlighting the Israelites' struggle to remain faithful to God. The stories of the Judges are filled with moments of incredible bravery and cunning. Figures like Deborah, Gideon, and Samson stand out as examples of God's chosen leaders. Deborah, a prophetess and warrior, led the Israelites to victory against their oppressors. Gideon, with his small band of warriors, defeated a much larger enemy force through clever tactics and divine intervention. Samson, known for his immense strength, fought against the Philistines, though his story is also one of personal failure and redemption. These stories are not just historical accounts, they carry profound spiritual lessons. They remind us of the importance of obedience to God and the consequences of straying from His path. The Book of Judges is pivotal in understanding the early history of Israel. It bridges the gap between the conquest under Joshua and the establishment of the monarchy. It's a story of a people struggling to hold on to their faith in their land, a people constantly tempted by the gods and practices of their neighbors. Through their triumphs and failures, the Judges remind us of the importance of obedience to God and the consequences of straying from His path. The era of the Judges was a time of great challenges and significant lessons for the Israelites. It set the stage for the eventual rise of the monarchy and the establishment of a more unified nation under kings like Saul, David, and Solomon. The legacy of the Judges is a testament to the enduring struggle of the Israelites to remain faithful to their covenant with God, despite the many obstacles they faced. God had commanded the Israelites to drive out the inhabitants of Canaan completely. This was not just a military directive but a spiritual mandate, intended to keep the Israelites pure and devoted to Him alone. However, after Joshua's death, they failed to fully obey this command. The loss of their strong leader left them vulnerable and uncertain, and they began to falter in their mission. They made treaties with some groups and allowed others to remain in their midst. These decisions were often driven by fear, convenience, or a desire for peace, but they had long-lasting repercussions. The Book of Judges tells us that God intentionally left these nations unconquered. This was a divine strategy, a way to test the Israelites' faithfulness and commitment to His commandments. They served as a test for the Israelites, a way to see if they would remain faithful to Him or be drawn into idolatry. The presence of these foreign nations was a constant temptation, a daily challenge to their loyalty. The presence of these foreign nations was a constant temptation. The allure of new and exotic gods, the promise of prosperity and fertility, was hard to resist. The Canaanites worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, and their religious practices often involved fertility cults and ritual prostitution. These practices were not only spiritually corrupt, but also morally degrading. To the Israelites raised in the strict monotheism of Egypt, these practices were alluring and dangerous. The contrast between their austere worship of Yahweh and the sensual, indulgent rituals of the Canaanites was stark. The book of Judges describes how, time and again, the Israelites were drawn to the Canaanite gods, abandoning their own God who had brought them out of slavery and into the Promised Land. This cycle of faithfulness and apostasy repeated itself throughout their history. This failure to drive out the Canaanites had serious consequences for the Israelites. It led to periods of oppression and suffering as they faced the repercussions of their disobedience. It led them into religious syncretism, a blending of Yahweh worship with Canaanite practices. This mixing of beliefs diluted their faith and compromised their identity as God's chosen people. They began to worship Baal and Asherah, deities associated with fertility and prosperity. These gods promised immediate rewards, unlike the often unseen and future-oriented promises of Yahweh. They built altars and high places for these gods, places strictly forbidden by Yahweh. These high places became centers of idolatry and moral corruption. They forgot the covenant they had made with God at Mount Sinai, the covenant that set them apart as His chosen people. This forgetfulness led to a loss of their unique identity and purpose, causing them to stray further from the path God had set for them. The cyclical pattern of the book of Judges begins with the Israelites falling into sin, a recurring theme that underscores the human tendency to stray from divine guidance. This disobedience inevitably leads to punishment by God, a divine response to their wayward actions. Judges 3:7 tells us that the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asherahs. These idols represented the false gods of the surrounding nations, leading the Israelites astray. This apostasy, this turning away from God, always had consequences. The community's spiritual decline brought about tangible suffering and distress. In this case, God allowed Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Aram-Naharaim, to conquer Israel. This foreign domination was a direct result of their unfaithfulness, a stark reminder of the cost of abandoning their covenant with God. For 8 years the Israelites endured his oppressive rule, a period marked by hardship and subjugation. The weight of their disobedience was felt in every aspect of their lives, but God, in His mercy, always provided a way back. Despite their repeated failures, His compassion never wavered. When the Israelites cried out for help, He raised up a deliverer, Othniel, Caleb's younger brother. Othniel's emergence as a leader was a beacon of hope for the beleaguered nation. Othniel is described as a man of valor and military skill. His courage and strategic acumen were crucial in the fight against their oppressors. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, empowering him to defeat Cushan-Rishathaim and free the Israelites from oppression. This divine empowerment was a testament to God's enduring support for His people. The land had rest for 40 years, a time of peace and prosperity under Othniel's judgeship. This period of tranquility was a direct result of their return to faithfulness. Othniel's story, though brief, establishes the template for the judges who follow. His leadership set a standard for future deliverers, combining divine guidance with human bravery. He embodies the ideal judge, a courageous leader, empowered by God, who delivers Israel from oppression. His life serves as an enduring example of what it means to be a true servant of God. His story is a reminder that even when the Israelites strayed from God, He remained faithful to His covenant. This faithfulness was a cornerstone of their relationship with the divine. He was always ready to forgive and restore them when they repented and turned back to Him. This cycle of sin, punishment, repentance, and deliverance is a powerful testament to God's unending mercy and love for His people. The cycle of sin and deliverance continues with the story of Ehud. Once again the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. This time God allowed Eglon, the king of Moab, to subjugate them. Eglon, a cruel and ruthless tyrant, ruled over Israel for 18 years, a period marked by suffering and humiliation for the Israelites. However, God raised up another deliverer, Ehud, a left-handed man from the tribe of Benjamin. Ehud's story is one of cunning and daring. He crafted a double-edged sword and strapped it to his right thigh, concealing it from view. He then went to pay tribute to Eglon, pretending to be a loyal subject. When he was alone with the king, Ehud used his left hand to draw the sword, plunging it into Eglon's belly. Eglon was so obese that the sword disappeared into his fat, and Ehud escaped unnoticed. Ehud then rallied the Israelites and led them in a revolt against the Moabites. They slaughtered 10,000 Moabite soldiers, throwing Eglon's army into disarray. Ehud's victory was decisive, and it ushered in 80 years of peace for Israel. Ehud's story, like Othniel's, demonstrates God's willingness to use unconventional methods and seemingly ordinary people to achieve his purposes. Sandwiched between the stories of Ehud and Deborah is the brief account of Shamgar, another judge who delivered Israel. Unlike the detailed narratives of Othniel and Ehud, Shamgar's story is concise, almost enigmatic. Judges 3:31 tells us that after Ehud came Shamgar son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He too saved Israel. This single verse is all we know about Shamgar's judgeship. We don't know his tribe, his background, or the circumstances surrounding his act of heroism. Yet despite its brevity, Shamgar's story is significant. It reminds us that God can use anyone regardless of their background or social standing to accomplish his will. Shamgar, armed only with an ox goad, a simple farming tool, single-handedly defeated 600 Philistines, demonstrating extraordinary courage and strength. Shamgar's story serves as a powerful reminder that God often works through unexpected means. He is not bound by human limitations or expectations. He can use a simple farmer, armed with a tool of his trade, to achieve victory over a formidable enemy. Shamgar's story, though brief, is a testament to the power of faith and courage, even in the face of overwhelming odds.